Hey everybody, this is Tommy from Studio Ultra Mega. I'm hanging out here with Riot Girl from Riot Girl Painting. Say hi, Angelina.
Hi, Angelina.
And today I am painting Armand Le Mouette's badass leather jacket. I had picked up Scalecolor's leather set.
Awesome.
And really wanted to see what it could do for colored leathers here. So we're gonna try to get this red weather beaten. I'm going for like weather beaten, like Letterman's jacket kind of a vibe, right? We're gonna have beaten red. We want to see sun wear, a little bit of wind burn. I want it real kind of faded looking, and then some kind of dirty white leather for the details. That's what I'm going for here.
Yeah. That's exactly what it looked like too in person. It was like a real weather beaten jacket. It was awesome. I loved it.
So what I'm laying on here for a base coat is Scalecolor's red leather from the leather set. On the base coats, I don't thin quite as much. I want to try to get a good opaque layer there. As you can see, I haven't really added the matte medium you see out on the palette. This time I tried to make sure you could see the palette during the tutorial.
Which is nice. And people have a good visual on how to even do it themselves. They know what they're using and how to keep everything separated.
Yeah, and you can, so while you're watching, you can, keep an eye on my brush. You'll see when I go into it. But I really haven't yet. I just want this nice opaque layer of red leather, which is a really great deep brick red. It's pretty gorgeous. And we're wrapped up on the base coat of the red leather. See,
Gorgeous.
nice and opaque.
Beautiful, smooth, solid.
Right on. And now we're going to be picking up a little bit of deep red, and that's that color there I just dipped in. And we're going to start going on to the very surface level highlights. Almost like a second base coat, only kind of leaving the red leather as a base to it, and in the deepest recesses. This particular layer is probably the most time-consuming one, because I'm going over almost the entire jacket still, but unlike the base coat, we have to go for precision because I'm leaving all that red leather visible and all the deep cracks and the shallow shadows in the armpits and underneath surfaces. So yeah, this is probably the layer that takes the longest to get done. Okay, we finally finishing up this deep red layer. Bring it up here to the camera to show. See that we got, it's like the next tint up from the red leather. You see all the cracks, all the darker red that's still visible.
Totally. It's really so. It gives a color to the actual jacket more than just deep red.
Right, so now we're going to start mixing in some blood red. And this is about as rich as we're going to get with the red. If we wanted to make this a really bright object, like some athletic wear or, like polished power armor, we'd keep this red coming up through, like fire engine red, the Aldebaran red, the reddish orange. And then we'd get those white highlights up at the top. But this is beaten red leather.
It's worn out.
Right.
It's not
so we're going to come up to this mid-tone red, and that's as red as this jacket's going to get. And from here, you can see the dot of paint to the left of the blood red. That is sandalwood. It's sandalwood is a great color by Scalecolor. It's really funky. Sandalwood, it looks like a flesh tone, but not organic. It's the exact same color as flesh, but I don't know, they just left a little pink out, but it's just a little dead feeling. So makes for a great leather color. And using that as the highlight from blood red, as we'll see through this demonstration, sandalwood kind of becomes the defining factor here. Okay, so this blood red layer here that we're doing, you can see I'm dipping quite a bit more into my matte medium as the colors progress brighter. We're putting more and more layers in the same spot. We're looking for more translucency, so we keep thinning a little bit more and a little bit more as we go, adding more and more matte medium.
Thinner is better in the long run. Thinner is always better.
Thinner is always better. now you see we're going into that sandalwood, and we're starting to bring that into the highlights, mixing that in with blood red a little bit. You see it's mostly blood red there. We're just a little bit of sandalwood to start creating, and it doesn't take much to all of a sudden pop that up a level of brightness.
Right. I would say it's about a 3-to-1 blood red sandalwood.
Sure. See, yeah, proportions don't really mean much with the way I paint. Yeah, it feels like about a 3-to-1, but as you see, I just kind of kept stirring it in until I saw what I liked. I paint by feel. I don't paint by the recipe, I guess. So that's why I wanted you guys to see the palette and watch how I feel it out. That's why the specific colors here don't really matter all that much. I'm a big fan of Scalecolor, but this could be Vallejo, this could be GW. That could be a black red and a brick red and a blood red from Vallejo. You're gonna mix them any way you want to achieve the tones you want anyway. And that's what I'm doing with that sandalwood highlight. I didn't have a set percentage, I didn't have a set ratio. I just know how much brighter it should be than the layer I'm putting it on. When you lay down that highlight color and it's just way too bright.
Totally. And then it just ruins everything.
Yeah, you have a little freak out, like, oh no, and then you go back in, mix that color in a little darker, and just smooth it out right there on the figure. Correct it as you go. So here's that completed layer, that first layer with a little bit of sandalwood added. You can see the highlights are still pretty subtle, but we're going to keep going. We got a few more rounds to go, and each time we take a pass, we're going to add more sandalwood, and we're going to make those highlights a little bit smaller and reach their apexes on the high points and corners of the jacket. You can see here we keep adding more and more sandalwood to the highlight. As the highlights around the jacket get progressively smaller, they get progressively brighter. Also, as these progressive highlights get brighter, we start to purposely neglect the undersides of the figure. Anything that would be cast in shadow, we start to purposely neglect, and these highlights slowly get brighter as they also point upwards towards a direct overhead light source. And now we're about to start our final round of highlights on the red. We're going to add even yet a bit more sandalwood. And this time these highlights are really going to be more like edge highlights. We're not trying to create soft layers anymore. We're thinning it out because we want some translucence to this line that we create, so it doesn't look totally stark. But yeah, this is the layer where yeah, we're just hitting the very, very hard edges that are facing upwards towards what would be a direct overhead light source. Also, when you see me dip back into the darker colors, what I'm doing there is fixing mistakes. That's part of painting, everybody.
Yeah, that happens most of the time. Yeah, that's very common. Lots of switching back and forth.
On a step like this, you know, especially when you got leather and we've got so many little creaks and creases and we want this to look weather beaten, it pays to hit as many So now we're just working our way around the figure, bringing these highlights up on all these sides of the jacket up to the same levels that we have on the sleeve there. On the undersides and underneath where there would be shadow, we're not bringing them up nearly as far.
No. Keeping that less bright. You don't want highlights underneath to be the same level of brightness as it is on top. Then you'll have a model that just looks overly bright everywhere, and now it doesn't even look like it has any source lighting at all.
Right, and we're not talking about object source lighting here, by the way. We're just talking about general above overhead lighting that gives the impression that your model is in an environment. Okay, so you'll see here on the arm firing the gun, we kept those highlights really bright and stark at the top where the sun might be beating down on it at the moment. And not just to reflect the current light, but he probably holds his arm like that quite a bit.
Yeah. Looks very color faded too.
So now that the red leather's done, you'll see I've got new colors out on my palette. Up at the top, the darkest gray tone you see there is brown gray. Mm-hmm. Then the mid-tone there is rainy gray. And then next to that we have a color called Nacre, which is, yeah, it's a really nice off-white. And these are the colors we're going to use to create dirty white leather. We're starting by putting a base coat of brown gray everywhere that we want to end up having the white leather. He's got these areas on the backs of his sleeve that I don't know, they look like
ribbed patching.
So we're gonna pick those out. We're gonna pick out all the trim. We're gonna pick out his scary skull that he's got on the back of his jacket, and we're gonna pick out his rocker that he's got over the skull that says "Rest in Oblivion." And we're gonna pay extra care to keep those letters in that rocker defined clearly, because we're going to be going layer and layer over it with highlights, and we don't want to fill those letters in at all.
So you want to keep it completely legible.
Yes.
That's a challenge.
It is.
I'm interested to see how that works.
Well, here, let me show you. So here we've got everything that's going to be white base coated with brown gray.
Beautiful.
And you see there, you see those letters?
Yes. I can actually see them.
We let that base red that we had originally painted the jacket show through, so those letters are going to pop real nice. So now we're starting what I always call my base layer of highlights. We're taking it up to the next tone. Well, we've got rainy gray, and we're going to go over all those surfaces, leaving the brown gray exposed in the deepest cracks, like in between those patched areas on the back of the arm.
Totally.
We might leave it visible in a little bit of the deepest shadows on the skull.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're hitting that rocker, and we're taking extra special care not to get any paint inside those letters. As always, a little bit of matte medium gives us translucence without destroying the adhesion of the paint. And here we go, our base highlight coat of rainy gray is completed.
Super smooth. Totally legible. Nice job.
Well, thank you very much. Now for the next layer of highlights, we're mixing in a little bit of that nacre into the rainy gray. I never like that first jump into the brighter highlights to be a straight color. Always got to be a mix with that base highlight layer I do. It ties the colors together better. That
The jump
plus
is always too much.
Yeah, that's when you get those start transitions that, you know, and people, oh, I can't figure out how to blend. You can always see the line. Make sure that those layers, they are always at least a little 50-50 mix layer in between. You know, blending those colors together and then thinning them. The translucence plus the two tones being mixed in together, that's going to help you get those blends to be smooth looking. Okay, here's that rainy gray and Nakar mixture. That layer is complete. If you were using another line of paint, like in Reaper, this might be leather white mixed with stone gray.
Yep.
And now we are doing a layer of highlights of pure Nakar. So again, the highlights get smaller and we start to favor the edges that are pointed upwards towards a general overhead light source.
And the same direction that you originally chose, otherwise the actual cohesion of your jacket will not look great.
Yeah, when I keep talking about that light source, I'm always basically assuming a noon overhead sun. Anything else, you're creating an environment and there's a whole lot more concerns when you start dealing with the direction of light or the intensity of light. This is just a general, slightly overcast summer day that we always put our figures in, unless we are trying to create a specific environment. Okay, there we have the layer of Nakar highlights. You can see on that rocker and that skull how we were favoring the overhead arc, the top edge of the rocker.
Totally.
We keep using our matte medium, keeping that thinned out. Just continuing to make our way around the figure, making sure that we get all these final Nakar highlights. You'll see me occasionally dip back into the red, correcting any, errors along the way. All right, as we bring these final highlights to a close and do our final touch-ups on the red, I'd like to thank all our patrons from Patreon for making this video possible.
And also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.